Welcome to Founders Feature, a podcast powered by Closers.io, where we dive into the journeys of innovative entrepreneurs and explore the road ahead for them and their companies. I'm your host, Zach Young, and in each episode, we uncover the stories behind impactful ventures, the challenges faced along the way, and the strategies driving their future growth. Today, we're joined by Richard Beaumont, who guides senior procurement leaders in transforming struggling teams into high-performing units that create measurable impact in people, sustainability, and profitability. As a seasoned mentor, speaker, trainer, and former chief procurement officer, Richard equips professionals with strategies to boost leadership and deliver strategic value. Richard, a very warm welcome to Founders Feature.
Good evening, Zach. Nice to meet you.
Absolutely. Going to be a great episode, a lot to dive into. Before we do, I do like to start with your background, though. So I touched on it a little bit, but could you walk us through, before what you're doing now, could you walk us through what were you doing previously, and what was really your inspiration to get into this space?
Okay, so I'm not a spring chicken, so it's a long path. Look, I was a robotics engineering graduate beginning, British Army officer for 14 years, mostly engineering, so building bridges, blowing stuff up, a bit of diving. When I first left the military, my first job was as a chief supply chain officer, chief procurement officer for a global construction company, so straight in at the deep end. And since then, 2 years managing a financial services company, 2 years running a startup for young people, 18 to 25-year-olds, getting them to work in the UK. A couple of years with McKinsey, where I developed my deep-seated hatred of PowerPoint. And then my last two jobs, EVP procurement at Rolls-Royce. So not the cars, that's the aircraft engines, nuclear, looking after our sort of end-to-end procurement digitization, our compliance, and the way that we delivered category strategies, which, if you like, are procurement problem-solving tool to help a business deliver value. And last job, chief commercial officer at Co-op Bank. So a mix of chief procurement officer and head of real estate, and getting those two functions set up. Left all that in 2015. And the last 10 years has been a mix of training, of a little bit of consultancy, a little bit of interim work, a little bit of tech. And I guess where I've got to, having gone through really a big focus on how do you develop procurement professionals for the future, I think the thing that has sparked me this year, and I suppose created one of the biggest pivots in the way that I approach training, has been AI. And there are two big issues that, if you like, I'm questioning. And the first one is simple, which is, how do you get the average employee, in this case in procurement, to become comfortable with AI, not as sort of like a glorified search on Google, as a tool that can be genuinely used to help them execute their jobs. And there is a huge gap because, look, okay, Gen Alpha, Gen Z, millennials, this is pretty comfortable stuff. But I'm at the top end of Gen X, and plenty of people with a lot of experience are at the top end of Gen X. And AI is not a comfortable bedfellow. So it's solving that problem. The second one is, I think, the biggest problem facing not just procurement, but every function, which is, how are you going to create the future me? In a world where every beginner, starter, foundational job is being handed over to AI, accountants, bookkeeping, AI, procurement, buyers, AI, marketing, creative, AI. The reason that leaders at the moment can use AI is because they can execute judgment. They can look at a problem and they can say, yeah, okay, he's done a decent job, but I've done this. I've been through those hard hours of work, and I know that what I'm looking at isn't quite right. But that's because I've got X years of experience. Now, roll forward 15 years, there are no foundational jobs left. How do you create the craftsman when the apprentice no longer existed? And how are you going to allow them to execute the same judgment? So I guess after doing lots of different things, the two problems that I'm looking at right now are, how do I create the future me? And how do I help those of us that are working today to make sure we're using AI effectively and efficiently to deliver value for our organizations?
Yeah, I love that. Quite the background. We'll definitely dive into some possible solutions for those problems.
Yeah.
I'm sure what you've been working on. I
Mm,
wanted to ask one thing. I talked to a
mm.
lot of people, and I just notice a lot of successful people, just well put together people, they start out in the military. Is that
Yeah.
something you recommend for younger people? Hey, learn in the military, your early 20s, and then go into business, things like that. Is that something you recommend?
Yeah, I do. And it's not for the reasons you'd think. I genuinely believe that anybody who has given service, either in the armed forces or in public services, police, coast guard, whatever, the biggest thing they learn is resilience, because nothing ever goes right. Everything is always a problem or a crisis, but you learn how to deal with that. And if I was going to compare and contrast the quality or the skill that the military gave me that people who did not serve in the military are lacking, it is resilience, that ability to get back up off the floor and find a different way around the problem without collapsing in a heap. And that kind of sounds melodramatic, but if you work on the basis that most militaries train people by shouting at them and getting them to run around with a log, I learned to dive by running around with a log. Go figure. But I was good at diving because I didn't want to run around with a log. But I was tired. I was angry. I was frustrated. I was sick of running around with a log. But I still put on the dive suit and did the task because it had given me resilience. So, yeah, absolutely. Any young person, any kind of serviced role, military or otherwise, I think gives one of the most important personal qualities that future professionals need. In particular, founders, where everything is a life of trying and failing. Every time you pivot, it's because you had the resilience to get up and try again. Yeah, 100% recommend it.
I wish my 18, 19-year-old self would have heard that, but let's be honest, I probably would have been a little too stubborn, a little too
Yeah,
stupid to
yeah,
listen
yeah,
to it.
yeah, yeah.
So
This is right. Yeah,
I wish
yeah.
I could have. Love that. Great stuff there. So diving into some problems and possible solutions.
Yeah.
Problem number one, educating more people on AI, especially maybe those that are a little older, more experienced in their careers.
Yeah.
How are we going about solving that problem? What are some ideas you've come up with?
So I'm playing with this right now, and I've tried adjusting existing training modules to weave in the use of any one of the large language models to help them. You're building a risk map for I buy electronics. What are the risks affecting the supply of electronics? And you try and weave in large language model, and it fails. And it fails because it's just too separated. One is a two-axis green, yellow, red picture that everyone's seen in every kind of school book since they've been in business, and they know that they're mapping impact and likelihood. The other is using this invisible magic carpet to try and design it. There's no faith, there's no confidence, and no ability to proceed. So what I figured was, what if you could start by giving people confidence that it could help them with something that they would understand how it was helping them. Simplest example, talking to people. Now, that kind of sounds natural, and we'll get into that whole Gen Z millennial comfort with actually talking people face to face. We're not going to go there now. But if you think about an experience, someone who's got 10, 15 years experience, you talk to anyone in procurement, they will tell you one of the biggest problems they have is actually building a relationship with their stakeholders. If I'm buying, I don't know, laptops, I'm supposed to have a relationship with the chief technology officer. And I'm not confident about knocking on their door. In fact, I'm not even confident about writing them an email and, God forbid, doing a presentation to them. So you take that as a start point. You say to an experienced professional, right? How does it go when you try and talk to stakeholders? And you hear the same thing: "Oh, we don't," or "It's all done by email," or "There's no relationship," or "They just shout at me." It's that stuff. And I say, okay, so how would you go about preparing a little presentation, an elevator pitch, 2 minutes? If you bumped into them on the stairs, how would you prepare that? And you just get a look of panic. Just panic about even meeting them on the stairs to give them a 2-minute brief, let alone come up with the subject. So I asked them a question and I say, look, what if I could show you that you could use one of these many large language models and it would actually help you to understand who you were talking to and to help you come up with the right way of expressing it. And you just got to listen, no AI is going to tell me how to speak to someone that I don't want to speak to, but that's a different topic. And you show them. And in 30 minutes, you can, if they're using Copilot, you go and grab a bunch of emails that difficult stakeholder has sent, and you show them how you can get Copilot to read all those emails and form a persona of your stakeholder from those emails. What do they care about? What's their language? Are they aggressive? Are they what are they? And then you say to them, ask the large language model to interview you. And they say, what do you mean interview me? I said, tell it to interview, tell it to ask you 5 questions about that stakeholder and how you feel about them. And lo and behold, it will ask them 5 questions about good things, bad things. And then I say, I want you to do the same for yourself. And they say, why do I want to interview myself? I said, because you're going to build a digital version of you. And you show them again, it reads the emails they've sent. And then they do the 5 interviews on them and they end up with these 2 personas. And they say, what are these for? And then you show them the magic, which is you say, this persona of you is going to present to that persona of your stakeholder. And now I want you to tell the AI what you've got to achieve. And they say, okay, I've got 2 minutes. I've got to tell them what's going on with laptops. I've got to tell them there's a specific problem. I'm going to tell them what my solution is. And then I say the critical thing, okay, so what is it you want at the end of the meeting? Are you informing them? Are you asking for a decision? What do you want? Tell it. Okay, I want a decision. I want confirmation that they're happy with what I'm doing. And okay, I say, right, now press go. And you get this look of, seriously, you want me to put this in? And when they see AI taking a digital version of them and a digital version of their stakeholder, the scope of the presentation, what they've got to cover, and what they're asking for at the end, and it is there in front of them, and you say, right, is that you speaking? And they go, yeah, it is. And could you read that? If you had to hide behind a piece of paper and read that to the stakeholder, could you do it? Yeah, I could. And I say, if you want to do an email, could you send it? I could. So now what we're going to do is we're going to get you to send a meeting appointment and you're going to read it to them over the phone and talk to them. And what I've discovered is that as soon as that use case clicks, the understanding of the way that you can build virtual representations of situations and people, the way that you can introduce different dynamics and factors and risks and play with them, and you can see people's confidence because they understand how it has helped them to solve a communication problem. Suddenly, when you then say to them, okay, I now want you to go and ask the AI to imagine it's the chief risk officer, and we're going to draw the new risk map for the supply of laptops in a difficult they're going, okay, now I get what I'm trying to do, and I know what that is going to help me with. And you suddenly see the unlocking of skills in a generation that may not have got it. For me, that is where I'm focusing my time at the minute, because I just think it's so important to equip, particularly generations that aren't comfortable with that skill set.
I love starting with the communication because that's one place people don't really think about using AI. So if they can comprehend and see how that works there, when it comes to building spreadsheets or building XYZ, a lot more easy to go from that. So that makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely. So yeah, it's a great way of in it. And as soon as people start to get confident and the way I train them, I've built a bit of a universe, an imaginary companies, suppliers, real legislation, and you can throw people into that very complex world, but now equip them with AI. And I love the first exercise I do with them, which is a typical kind of, we're going to do this exercise. I want you to read yourself in. And they say, okay, there's going to be a little exercise instruction saying, you are the chief procurement officer of a European company. I throw 35 documents at them. Company briefs, personality briefs, legal briefs, a court case that's going on against the company, a supply chain problem, a risk register, and I give them 20 minutes. and they look at you and it's just like, what are you doing? It's like, this is 2 days work. And again, because they've done that communication thing, they look and they say, are you telling me I could chuck all this stuff in and end up with a brief? Yeah, you've got your persona. Tell the AI to go and read the documents. Tell it to give you an executive briefing and summarize those documents and which bits are relevant and which bits aren't. And when they watch AI treating them as the customer, lights go on. And it's just a pleasure to see people growing in that way.
And so are you going to companies, corporations? And is this kind of how
Online,
you're doing this at scale?
yeah, I in person on online. And in fact, one of the things that post COVID, everything went online. I've noticed in the last couple of years, some organizations are bringing back on-site, in-person training the way we always did it. And if you ask me honestly, it's yin and yang, but it's also good and bad in an opposite way. And what do I mean by that? Online training is unbeatable for scale, efficiency, the number of people you can cover, the getting rid of your carbon footprint of travel. Everything about it is brilliant, except for the fact as a trainer, you're not in the room with someone and you haven't got those whole body language cues about whether you've got your audience with you or not. And secondly, the brilliant thing about everyone being online is that we are now all ninjas at looking at the screen and nodding while doing our email. And you're never going to shift that if someone's got something urgent. Whereas in a room, you can't do that. So I have a love of online because frankly, I'm done with airports. But if you ask me honestly, I'd rather have 20 students in front of me in a classroom and watch that wonderful human dynamic going. And if we just rewind a bit to my observation about the comfort of the up and coming generations in actually doing face-to-face communication, the only way we're going to fix that is if we actually do face-to-face communication.
Yeah. Can't blame you about the airport. I
Oh,
can't
man,
blame you about the airport stuff.
I in Europe, I don't know what it is. I live in the middle of the UK, so my easiest airport to get to is Birmingham. Everywhere I go to in Europe, it requires me to fly via Frankfurt Airport. And no offense to the wonderful people of Germany and the wonderful history of Frankfurt, but I hate that airport with a passion.
Noted. Do not go to Frankfurt Airport if I ever make it
It's
out
got the
that way.
longest tunnel. It's literally got a domestic and an international terminal. It's got more than that.
Mhm.
But it just seems that whenever you're changing between the two, the tunnels that go under the runway with the conveyor belts,
Yeah.
it's very long, it's warm, and those conveyor belts never work. And you're always late for your connecting flight, which means whatever you're going to do, you're going to arrive sweaty. No, I'm Frankfurt. Oh my God. Can I not drive? It would be easier.
I can't blame you there. So when you're doing the classes, right, whether it's online or in person, what's
Yeah.
typical length? Are you there for a couple hours? Is it a multiple day kind of thing? What does that typically look like?
That's a really good question. I've tried everything. I've tried 1 hour a week. I've tried 1 hour a day. I've tried whole days on site, every combination. What I find best is recognizing the fact that we've got a limited attention span. I find if you're going to do proper training on a topic, so take that scenario about teaching people communication, that kind of naturally falls into, if you like, four bits. There's the bit where you're teaching someone the basics of how to engage with AI, set the wide context, narrow, begin the focus conversation. That's one exercise. Second exercise is persona of teaching people to read emails from a stakeholder. Third session, you're teaching it about you. Fourth session, you're building communication. So what I find is that, you take an hour, you do it as a 50-minute sprint. You do about the first 10 or 15 minutes doing the theory and describing the exercise and dealing with any questions. You put them into small groups in the room or online breakout rooms. It doesn't matter. They're brilliant because you get people talking to each other and discovering stuff. And you give them maybe 30 minutes to go and solve the problem. You bring them back in the room. There's 5 minutes of a bit of share and a bit of debrief, 10 minutes coffee. And that 50-minute work, 10-minute break, I find if you do that in a 4-hour session, 4 sprints, you don't overload anyone, whether you're online or in a room. You are giving really focused, this is the theory, now go try it for yourself. And I've gravitated to that kind of 4-hour, 4 sprint with plenty of breaks model. And it seems to work. People like it.
Yeah, that sounds good. You can tell you've probably been on the other side of a lot of trainings. Not technically, not AI, but I'm sure there's a lot of corporate trainings you've been through.
Do you know what? Don't laugh. There is next door in the lounge. I've got a wonderful coffee table book, which was 250 years of the Royal Military Academy of Sandhurst, right, where we train all British Army officers. And it so happened that they were writing that book to coincide with the late Her Majesty a Queen coming to take the pass-off parade, which was the parade where I commissioned out of officer cadet into lieutenant. And so the coffee book's got lots of parade. Anyway, halfway through it, there is a picture of us doing tactical training. And if you imagine you've got a big U-shaped galleried room, down the middle, you've got a sort of a large scale 3-dimensional map of some terrain. And they're teaching you the theory of combat, how units move and what they do. About 2/3 of the way up, on the back of the U, is Officer Cadet Beaumont doing that. So I am immortalized in a coffee table book of having completely lost the will to live in a very long. So I know the pain of being locked into. Oh boy. So yeah, I was caught.
They were not giving you 10-minute coffee breaks on the hour.
No, none. You got to run with a log if it went wrong. And that was it.
A log comes back. No more log.
Yeah. I know. It's amazing. You can learn everything.
Oh, love it, Richard. Love it all. Where can the listeners find you? Where can they connect with you online, Richard?
So website, beaumontprocurement.com. I am on LinkedIn, Richard Beaumont. There is a YouTube channel, Beaumont Procurement. And in fact, one of the things we do on there, I have a partner in crime, Claire Green. She does a similar role to me, but in finance. She does finance transformations. And we've done a thing called Procurement and Finance Coffee Break. Very similar to this. We talk amongst ourselves, or we have a guest, and we talk about genuine things that happen in business. So across those 3 channels, that's where I am. And I think it would be great to see people just coming and engaging and sharing ideas of what is the challenge that people genuinely face about AI. We didn't talk. I'll tell you what I was going to say. This Craftsman Apprentice issue. Do you remember the days? We're all clear with the idea of an intern. And an intern, in fact, someone once described the current AI agents as over-enthusiastic interns that have come back drunk from a party and you've let them loose in the office for the night. And there's AI agents in a nutshell at the moment. But actually, that's the model we've got to, I think we've got to leverage. And what do I mean is that every senior person, anybody, should have a shadow. There should be someone who's just starting out on their career who, instead of just being given a job on a desk somewhere on floor 27, they are sat next to you, listening to what you do, helping you almost as an executive assistant, but they're not. They're actually learning the ropes. Because if we don't start doing that quick, all of that knowledge and experience is going to walk out the door. And I'm working on a white paper with a colleague at the moment to try and come up with ideas. So when that goes live, it will be later on this week, perhaps. Nice. That'll be on the website, and I'll certainly be sharing it on LinkedIn. And I would welcome feedback as to how are we going to solve that problem. But there you go. Perfect.
Yeah, big white paper, big problem coming, and Richard's on the case though. So we'll get there.
Sure. Yeah,
love it.
All right.
Richard, pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for your time.
Look, my pleasure. Thanks. Always good to chat.
Absolutely. And that will wrap up another inspiring episode of Founders Feature. To our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to go and connect with Richard on all of his social media and websites. All of those links will be in the show notes and description down below. And if you are a business owner, specifically a coach, consultant, or agency owner, and you're looking to scale your business, and you really want to enhance your sales and marketing efforts, visit closers.io to hop on a call with our team and discover how we went from 0 to 30 million per year in less than 3 years. Until then, keep on climbing.